Your soulmate is already married, but what they did next will shock you. My beloved child, hold your thoughts for just a moment, because the truth you are about to hear refuses to fit inside ordinary expectations. This is not a story about chasing someone. It is not a story about breaking what already exists. It is a story about timing, hidden choices, and the mysterious way life reveals what the heart cannot see at first. Before you decide you already know where this is going, stay with me a little longer. The final picture is very different from the first glance. Have you ever wondered why some people enter your thoughts without warning? Why a familiar feeling appears before a familiar face? What if the connection you have been trying to understand belongs to a chapter that has not fully opened yet? Sometimes life introduces two people while one of them is still walking through a completely different season. From the outside, everything appears settled. Every detail suggests their path has already been chosen. Yet beneath the surface, something keeps moving. Quietly. Patiently. Invisibly. Now imagine discovering that the person your heart keeps sensing is already married. Most people would believe the story ends right there. But this is exactly where the real mystery begins. Do not rush ahead. Every unexpected answer has its own perfect moment. Think carefully. Is every marriage the ending of a love story? Or can it sometimes become the beginning of a deeper understanding about purpose, growth, and identity? Life has a strange habit of teaching people who they truly are before showing them where they truly belong. Many spend years living the life they believed they were supposed to live, only to discover they have been learning lessons rather than reaching the destination. This story follows one of those impossible moments. Someone believed their future had already been written. Someone believed there were no more surprises waiting beyond the horizon. And then, one quiet decision changed everything. Not overnight. Not dramatically. Just one small choice that slowly created waves no one could ignore. You may think this sounds impossible. Keep listening. The next revelation connects more pieces than you expect. Imagine standing at a crossroads without realizing it. Every smile looks genuine. Every routine feels normal. Every conversation sounds familiar. Yet somewhere beneath those ordinary days, unanswered questions continue growing stronger. Questions no one else can hear. Questions that refuse to disappear. What if I have misunderstood my own journey? What if the person I became isn't the person I was always meant to become? Those questions rarely arrive with noise. They arrive in silence. And silence changes people. That is why appearances can never tell the entire story. The world notices photographs. Life notices transformation. One day, something unexpected crossed this person's path. It wasn't a dramatic event. It wasn't a miracle falling from the sky. It was simply one moment of awareness, so small that almost anyone else would have ignored it. Yet that single moment planted a thought that refused to leave. Sometimes destiny does not knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers only once. Those who recognize the whisper begin walking in a completely different direction. What happened next surprised even them. Instead of running from uncomfortable questions, they faced them. Instead of pretending everything felt complete, they chose honesty with themselves. That choice became the first domino. And once the first domino falls, nothing remains exactly the same. Pause for a second. Have you ever noticed that the biggest turning points rarely announce themselves? They hide inside ordinary afternoons. Quiet conversations. Unexpected memories. A single sentence heard at exactly the right time. Looking back, those tiny moments suddenly become the moments that changed everything. Maybe that is why your own story has been asking you to pay closer attention lately. Not because something is ending. Because something meaningful is preparing to begin. But the greatest surprise is still hidden. You have only seen the first layer. The next chapter reveals what this married soulmate actually did, and why that decision left everyone speechless. Wait until that moment arrives. Only then will every piece you've heard so far finally make sense. A strange realization often arrives without asking permission, and this is exactly where everything begins to shift. You have reached the point where the hidden pieces slowly come together, but don't race ahead. The next few moments carry the weight of everything that came before. Stay a little longer, because the picture is becoming clearer with every step. Days passed, yet that quiet moment refused to disappear. The person everyone believed had already settled into their future began noticing things they had ignored for years. Not flaws. Not regrets. Something much deeper. A feeling that life was inviting them to become more honest with themselves than ever before. Nothing changed on the outside at first. The same routines continued. The same familiar places. The same conversations. But inside, everything had begun to move. Have you ever experienced that feeling? When the world sees nothing different, yet your heart quietly tells you that a new chapter has already started? Those moments are impossible to explain. They don't ask for attention. They simply continue growing until they become impossible to ignore. This is where the unexpected decision appeared. Instead of pretending those questions didn't exist, this person began writing them down. Every thought. Every emotion. Every dream that had been hidden beneath years of routine. No one else knew. There were no dramatic announcements. Only quiet reflection. That single habit transformed everything. Because clarity rarely arrives all at once. It arrives one honest thought at a time. Each page revealed something surprising. They realized they had spent years living according to expectations instead of understanding their own purpose. They weren't searching for another person. They were searching for the truth about themselves. And that discovery changed the direction of every decision that followed. Before we continue, if this story has made you pause and reflect on your own journey, feel free to share your thoughts below. If you enjoy stories that explore destiny, growth, and unexpected life turns, you can also subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Now, let's continue, because the biggest revelation has not arrived yet. Weeks later, something happened that no one could have predicted. An old memory resurfaced. Not because someone forced it. Not because anyone reminded them. It simply appeared. A forgotten conversation. A familiar smile. A feeling they had never fully understood. For the first time, they didn't ask, "Why did this happen?" Instead, they asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single question changed everything. People often believe shocking moments come with loud surprises. But sometimes the most shocking thing is watching someone become completely honest with themselves. The more clarity they gained, the more peaceful they became. Fear slowly disappeared. Confusion began losing its power. The future no longer looked like a prison of fixed choices. It looked like an open road filled with possibilities. Then came the decision no one expected. Not a reckless decision. Not a secret decision. A thoughtful one. A decision guided by integrity, patience, and respect for everyone involved. They refused to build their future on confusion. Instead, they chose to let truth guide every step from that day forward. That choice shocked everyone who expected drama. Because wisdom is often more surprising than chaos. Now ask yourself something. What if the greatest turning point in your own story will not come from chasing someone? What if it comes from becoming the kind of person who recognizes truth when it quietly appears? Think about that for a moment. The next chapter reveals the conversation that changed every remaining piece of this mystery. And once you hear those words, you'll understand why this story was never about impossible love. It was always about impossible clarity. Everything has been leading to this moment, but don't assume you already know the ending. Stories that truly transform people never follow the path everyone predicts. Stay until the final moment of this chapter, because the conversation you're about to witness changes the meaning of everything you've heard so far. The day finally arrived. There was no dramatic setting. No perfect weather. No grand announcement. Just two people sitting across from one another, with honesty replacing every excuse that had been carried for years. For a few quiet seconds, neither of them spoke. Sometimes silence tells the truth before words ever can. Then came a sentence that neither of them expected. "I've spent so much time trying to understand where my life was going, that I forgot to understand who I was becoming." The room felt different after those words. Not because they solved every question. Because they opened the door to real understanding. The conversation was never about escaping the past. It was about facing the present with complete honesty. Every expectation. Every fear. Every hidden dream. Everything was finally placed on the table without blame or resentment. That was the moment everything changed. Not because someone chose emotion over wisdom, but because they chose truth over illusion. Have you noticed how people often expect life-changing moments to arrive with noise? Yet the most powerful moments usually arrive quietly. A calm decision. A peaceful conversation. A single promise to never pretend again. Those simple moments create futures that no one can predict. As the conversation continued, another realization appeared. The connection they had been trying to understand was never asking them to ignore responsibility or chase fantasy. Instead, it had awakened something much deeper. Growth. Courage. self-awareness. The kind of transformation that makes every future decision wiser than the last. That is why the title of this story surprises so many people. The shock was never that someone was already married. The real surprise was what happened next. Instead of acting impulsively, they chose patience. Instead of creating confusion, they created clarity. Instead of following emotion alone, they allowed wisdom to lead every step. Few people expected that. Most expected chaos. Life delivered maturity instead. And strangely enough, that became the greatest turning point of all. Months later, people who knew them noticed something impossible to ignore. There was a different confidence. A different peace. A different way of speaking. It wasn't because every circumstance had become perfect. It was because they had finally stopped fighting themselves. The future they once feared now looked full of possibility. Not because every answer had arrived. Because they had learned to trust the journey instead of forcing the destination. Now pause and think about your own life. Have you been searching for certainty, when life may actually be preparing you for wisdom? Have you been looking at closed doors, while a completely different path has quietly been opening beside you? Sometimes the greatest connection you'll ever experience does not immediately give you the person you expected. It first gives you the version of yourself you were always meant to become. That is the hidden message inside this story. The unexpected choice wasn't about breaking lives apart. It was about building a future on honesty, respect, and personal growth. And when people finally understood that, they weren't shocked by the relationship. They were shocked by the transformation. The story isn't over yet. One final chapter remains. In the end, you'll discover the unexpected lesson that connects every clue from the beginning. And why what seemed impossible at first became the very reason this journey changed everything. One final piece remains, and once it falls into place, you'll see why this journey was never about chasing a person, it was about discovering a future built on wisdom. Before you leave, stay through these last moments. The ending is not what most people expect. Time has a remarkable way of revealing what emotions cannot. Months passed. Life continued moving forward. The questions that once filled every quiet moment slowly gave way to something stronger: peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from getting everything you want, but the kind that comes from understanding what truly matters. Looking back, they finally understood the moment that had shocked everyone. It was never a secret meeting. It was never an impulsive decision. It was never a dramatic escape. The shocking part was this. They chose integrity when almost everyone expected emotion to take control. That single choice became the foundation for every good thing that followed. People often believe destiny is about finding the right person. But destiny is just as much about becoming the right person. The future changes the moment your character changes. That realization spread far beyond one relationship. Family noticed it. Friends noticed it. Even strangers could sense a quiet confidence that had never existed before. Nothing about their transformation happened overnight. It happened through countless small decisions. One honest conversation. One peaceful choice. One courageous step after another. That is how extraordinary futures are built. Now think about your own journey. Perhaps there is a chapter in your life that still feels unfinished. Perhaps there is a question you keep asking yourself. Don't rush to force an answer. Sometimes clarity arrives only after patience has done its work. The greatest surprises in life rarely appear exactly when we demand them. They appear when we are finally ready to understand them. If this story encouraged you to see your own journey from a different perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy meaningful stories filled with mystery, hope, and life lessons, you're always welcome to subscribe so we can continue exploring these journeys together. As this story comes to a close, remember one final truth. Not every unexpected connection is meant to rewrite your life overnight. Some connections arrive to awaken your perspective. Some arrive to strengthen your character. Some arrive simply to remind you that your future is still being written. What looked impossible at the beginning became meaningful by the end because the greatest miracle wasn't a relationship. It was transformation. The person everyone thought had already reached the end of their story discovered that every ending can become the beginning of greater wisdom. And perhaps, as you listen today, you weren't just hearing someone else's story. You were quietly preparing for the next chapter of your own. Until next time, keep moving forward with patience, clarity, and hope. Sometimes the most surprising destination is the one that quietly changes you long before you ever arrive. A new horizon always appears after the final answer, and this is where the deepest truth quietly reveals itself. You have stayed until this moment, and that matters. Because the greatest stories are never remembered for their twists alone, they are remembered for how they changed the person listening. Imagine looking back years from now. Not at the people who entered your life. Not at the opportunities you almost missed. But at the version of yourself that was shaped by every unexpected season. That is where the real miracle lies. The story you have just followed was never meant to convince you that every mysterious connection ends in romance. It was meant to remind you that every meaningful connection leaves a lesson behind. Some people arrive to stay. Some arrive to teach. Some arrive to awaken a strength you never realized you carried. The wise heart learns the difference. Think about the title one last time. Your soulmate is already married. But what they did next will shock you. At first, it sounded like the beginning of an unbelievable mystery. Now you know the real surprise. The shocking decision was choosing honesty over impulse. Growth over confusion. Patience over pressure. A future built on respect instead of regret. That kind of choice rarely becomes a headline. Yet it quietly changes generations. Pause here for a moment. What if the answer you've been waiting for is not another sign from the outside? What if the next breakthrough begins the day you trust your own growth? Life has a remarkable way of placing people on our path at exactly the right time. Not always to give us what we want immediately, but to prepare us for what we will truly value later. Perhaps someone will inspire you. Perhaps someone will challenge you. Perhaps someone will simply remind you that your story is still unfolding. Every chapter has a purpose. Even the chapters that seem confusing while you're living them. One day, you'll connect the moments that once felt unrelated. The delayed conversations. The unexpected pauses. The quiet lessons. The ordinary days that secretly transformed your future. Only then will you realize that nothing meaningful was ever wasted. If you've stayed with this journey from beginning to end, carry one thought with you. Never measure your future by what you can see today. The most beautiful chapters often begin long before anyone recognizes them. Keep becoming wiser. Keep choosing integrity. Keep believing that growth is never a detour, it is the road itself. Because the person you are becoming today may be the greatest gift your future has been preparing all along. And perhaps, years from now, when you remember this story, you won't remember it because it surprised you. You'll remember it because it quietly changed the way you looked at your own life. Until our paths cross again, keep your eyes open, your heart steady, and your mind ready for the unexpected. Sometimes the next chapter doesn't arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives with a single quiet decision that changes everything. Every unforgettable journey leaves behind one final echo, and this is that moment. If you've stayed until now, you've already discovered something many people never do. The greatest revelations are not found by rushing to the ending, they are found by understanding the journey. Close your eyes for just a second and imagine standing at the edge of a brand new chapter. Behind you are every unanswered question. Every moment of uncertainty. Every season when nothing made sense. Ahead of you is a road that has not yet been written. Most people fear that road. But those who have learned from life's unexpected turns begin to welcome it. Why? Because they understand something powerful. The future is not built by perfect circumstances. It is built by consistent choices. Think back to every moment in this story. The mystery. The silence. The unexpected realization. The honest conversation. The decision to choose integrity over impulse. None of those moments looked extraordinary while they were happening. Only later did they reveal their true importance. Life works that way more often than we realize. Today's ordinary decision can become tomorrow's greatest turning point. Perhaps someone watching this has been asking, when will my story finally change? Maybe the better question is, what small decision today could quietly change everything tomorrow? That is where transformation begins. Not with certainty. Not with dramatic signs. But with one peaceful step in the right direction. Remember this whenever life feels unclear. A closed chapter is not a failed chapter. Sometimes it simply prepared you to recognize the chapter that truly belongs to you. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep becoming someone your future will thank. Because every season, easy or difficult, adds another page to the person you are becoming. And one day, you'll look back with gratitude for the moments you once questioned. If this story stayed with you until the very end, perhaps it wasn't just entertainment. Perhaps it was an invitation to look at your own journey with fresh eyes. There are still beautiful surprises waiting in your future. There are still meaningful connections you have not yet experienced. There are still opportunities quietly moving toward you, even if you cannot see them today. So walk forward with confidence. Let patience be stronger than fear. Let wisdom speak louder than uncertainty. And let every new day remind you that your greatest chapter is never the one you've already lived. It is the one you are about to write. Thank you for sharing this journey from beginning to end. Until we meet again, keep your heart open, your mind curious, and your step steady. Because sometimes the most incredible stories don't finish with a shocking ending. They finish by inspiring someone to begin a better future. And perhaps that someone is you. One last reflection remains, and it may become the part you remember long after this video ends. Don't leave just yet. Sometimes the quietest conclusion carries the strongest message. Life has an unusual way of revealing its greatest lessons when we stop trying to predict every outcome. For so long, this story seemed to be about one unexpected relationship. Now you can see it was about something much greater. It was about becoming the kind of person who values truth more than assumptions. The kind of person who understands that every meaningful connection carries responsibility as well as emotion. That realization changed everything. The future no longer looked uncertain. It looked full of purpose. Not because every question had been answered, but because they had learned that not every answer arrives immediately. Some answers are discovered while you continue walking forward. Imagine if they had allowed fear to make every decision. Imagine if they had believed the first impression was the complete story. Nothing would have changed. No growth. No clarity. No peace. Sometimes the greatest mistake is believing that today's picture is the final one. Life keeps adding new pages. Every sunrise writes another sentence. Every decision creates another possibility. Perhaps this is why you found this story today. Not to predict your future. Not to tell you exactly what tomorrow will bring. But to remind you that your future is still alive with possibilities you cannot yet imagine. Take a moment and ask yourself, what chapter have I been afraid to begin? What truth have I been postponing? What opportunity have I ignored simply because it didn't arrive the way I expected? Those questions matter. Because honest questions often lead to extraordinary answers. Never underestimate the power of quiet progress. The strongest transformations rarely happen in front of an audience. They happen in ordinary moments. While no one is watching. While no one is applauding. While one simple decision is shaping an entirely different tomorrow. That is how remarkable lives are built. Not through one dramatic event, but through hundreds of meaningful choices made with patience and wisdom. As this journey reaches its final heartbeat, remember this above everything else. Do not measure your life by the chapters that confused you. Measure it by the person those chapters helped you become. One day, you'll look back and realize that every unexpected twist carried a hidden purpose. Every delay strengthened your character. Every unanswered question sharpened your perspective. And every season prepared you for the next one. Thank you for staying until this moment. Wherever your own journey leads from here, keep moving with hope. Keep choosing integrity. Keep believing that meaningful change often begins quietly. Because the next chapter of your story may already be unfolding. One decision. One conversation. One unexpected moment at a time.